What's up and welcome back to the channel. The name is Ninja Knight. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell up above for future uploads. Check out the links posted in the description down below to support the channel and consider joining the channel today. Thank you to everyone who supports. So episode 4 of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier dropped, and it's taken me a couple of days to kind of think about what I thought about the episode, and there's a number of things that is going on within this series that don't seem to jive well together. And with the sprinkling of information that we're getting before the show and during the show, it's certainly painting up a narrative here now that's going to be a very big problem, and I think that this might be the show that finally does in the MCU. You're seeing the likes of the viewership figures particularly tank after the likes of episode 2 with the woke fest that went on within that episode and the disgracefulness with which they portrayed the whole situation. They're portraying Sam Wilson as this absolute nobody, even though the fact that he's an Avenger. They're telling us then he can't get a loan, even though he's an Avenger, and the likes of the Vision can buy a plot of land for him and Wanda. But this top tier Avenger here in Falcon that has fought alongside Steve Rogers, and who is also a genius level intellect from what we see in the first episode by the fact that he can actually fix Red Wing and make it work. You would simply think that this man would have absolutely no problem whatsoever by being able to earn money, but there seems to be some sort of issue. But this is what the series is trying to do. It's trying to play down Sam Wilson, it's trying to play down Anthony Mackie, and I don't think it works out, and I'm going to talk about him at length in a moment. The first person I want to talk about though within this video is Sebastian Stan as Bucky Barnes. Now, I've said it in the previous video, Bucky Barnes within this series is white guilt. That's what he is. He is there to feel guilty. He is there to be handing everything and anything he can towards Sam Wilson, and it's a pretty sad dynamic. I thought that this would have been a very good buddy cop adventure. It has turned into an absolute disaster. I thought that this might have been the buddy cop maybe mixed with the likes of the Bourne sort of series, and I thought that that would have been a very good way to go, and they might have done maybe a political sort of air towards it where the likes of the Shield is passed to somebody else and that's who was chosen, and the men have to get over it and deal with it, and then if one of them eventually does become Captain America, it might be at the expense of perhaps the new Captain America passing away for some sort of reason, and they're able to take up the mantle now. Instead, what we're seeing through the series is pure and utter victimhood. You're seeing a victimhood from the likes of Bucky Barnes, who is in therapy. He's listening to people talking to him and at him. He is breaking out the likes of Zemo, which goes totally against what had happened in Civil War. You're then seeing then with Bucky Barnes in this latest episode, he absolutely gets manhandled by the Dora Milaje, which is unbelievable within itself. He is a super soldier. He is on par with the likes of Steve Rogers, and he's on par with the likes of the Black Panther. Yet the Dora Milaje are able to handle this guy. I know what you're saying. You're saying to yourself, well, they were able to handle the likes of Killmonger, and he was full of the heart-shaped herb. They were for a time, and then he was able to dispatch of them with no problem whatsoever. It was only when there was an intervening factor within that movie was Killmonger actually stopped, because he was going to go through the Dora Milaje no problem whatsoever, and that was on his own. So when you're trying to draw that factor in then, and basically what happens with Bucky Barnes then within this episode is he has a psychological break, and I think this could be a psychological break for the character in that he went to this nation that was supposed to help restore him and rehabilitate him and trust him. They trusted him so much that they gave him a full arm of vibranium. Yet then the Dora Milaje can absolutely take him to task and then take that arm away from him, literally disarm him, and he just looks like an absolute gone being looking at these people then having just disarmed them. It's not good, and the way Bucky Barnes has been treated within this series is nothing short of disgraceful. This is a character that I've long since talked about insofar as that with the unfortunate passing of Chadwick Boseman, I think the next best successor would have been Barnes as the Black Panther. I know that that's going to be controversial, but hey, this is the MCU that's going to introduce Jane Foster, Natalie Portman as Thor in the new Thor movie. So whilst we're at it and whilst we're going to mess around with characters, why don't we mess around with the Black Panther? They're not going to do that though, and I don't think they really should. But I think story-wise in the MCU, I think it would make a lot of sense, and as I said in a previous video before, I think it makes a lot of sense story-wise that Bucky would take up the mantle of the Panther with T'Challa gone, and then hand it then eventually over to Shuri once the time is right, and act as nearly her bodyguard and show her the ropes and how things go. That would have been the way I would have taken it. The next character that I'm going to focus on now is John Walker, and this is someone that I actually really particularly like. I think Wyatt Russell is doing a great job in the role, and I think that he's shown various different kind of circumstances that come up for this character. The choice between taking the serum, not taking the serum, and then when he eventually does, then it's unfortunate. He's obviously been directed to kind of have this twitchy sort of movement within his head, And for anyone who knows the comics, this guy is going to eventually possibly become US agent, who is kind of like a bad version of Captain America, who gets involved with the Thunderbolts, who are a little bit dubious within themselves. So we'll be excited to see what happens with Wyatt Russell, if he's going to survive the series, because I kind of don't think he will. I think that they're going to use him for this series, and then he's going to be gone by the end of it, and the Shield is going to be handled up. I'd be very surprised if he continues on after this series. I really will, with the way they're making it go forward. I think he's the strongest player within this series, I think, along with Zemo, and even at that, I think it's kind of embarrassing when you're seeing that the low-hanging fruit of the MCU is talking about Zemo dancing at the moment, not about the nefarious plans that he's up to, the fact that he's a bad guy, or not the fact that in the comics he's actually attributed and attached to some really evil, nefarious characters. They're making this guy into a meme, which is really low-hanging fruit. It's really poor, and I think that that's a very sad indictment of where the likes of the MCU is looking to go. But back to Walker. Walker is very likeable in the last couple of episodes, and what's really weird to see is he's more likeable than Bucky, he's more likeable than Sam, and in my opinion he's actually more likeable than Steve Rogers. I know that is a very controversial thing to say, but I think he comes across as a fairly modern person, and I think he comes across then as somebody that is very much so interested in the duty for his country. But it seems like the writers of this show seem intent on making that a negative and making that a nasty thing. Now, within that, now you've seen some weird articles that have come out and have said that this character is an ist and he's a phobe and all of this sort of stuff, even though his wife is of a different race, or his girlfriend at the very least is of a different race, and his best friend within this episode, Hoskins, and through this series so far, basically his point man is a black man. So if this guy is an ist, I mean, this is the total nonsense that you're seeing from the likes of the lamestream media, trying to paint this guy as an ist and a phobe. It's unbelievable stuff, but this is what these people think, and it's hard to shake them. These people are involved in these big productions now, in these comic book companies, and when you're seeing people switch off within their thousands, particularly after the second episode, you can't blame them. Now, this is a series, like I said, I'm not watching it on Disney Plus, if you know what I'm saying. So this is why I'm talking about it. A lot of people have cancelled their Disney Plus, particularly after the Gina Carano incident, so I can understand that point of view. As the episode moves on, he does eventually take the serum, and I think that is a good thing that he does, because he realises that he's got to do something to get a step ahead of everyone else. I thought it was also a very sad point of view that they decided to have him manhandled also by the Dora Milaje, and it seemed like that the only one that kind of held his ground was Sam Wilson in a way, and he wasn't wearing any sort of armour or anything like that. He's not a super soldier, he's a paratrooper as it is, and he has been involved in fights, but he just mainly uses the likes of his weapons and the wings. So that was the one player in the game that we were saying that wasn't really manhandled by the Dora Milaje. But then, like, there's this weird line where he's like, I'm Captain America, and it's kind of like, oh, they painted that now to make him an absolute sad act, but it actually doesn't do that. It actually makes him even stronger as a character. And then you're seeing a lot of the weirdos then on Twitter being like, well, the Dora Milaje picked up the vibranium shield, so they're Captain America now. And this is the type of people that the MCU is aiming towards now. It's aiming towards these people that are like Raylos, these people that have completely and utterly lost it, that are sitting at home with 50 cats and tweet about this stuff incessantly every day. But you're seeing a character that I think is actually, other than the fact that he was manhandled by the Dora Milaje, that's written quite well. He's very unsure of himself. He talks about he at the minute in Afghanistan. He's talking about Hoskins being his point man. There's a very good relationship that is built up between these two people. Meanwhile, on the other side of things, you're seeing in Carly Morgenthau, who was a very nefarious character, a bad character, and actually an ist, and that is involved with certain very nefarious things, the likes of what happened in episode 3, particularly blowing up a certain building with people in it. And they are trying to paint that character now as, well, it's just a means to an end. That's what we want to see. The bigger picture of this series, though, was looking at this is a character, by the way, Carly Morgenthau, and this is why they're putting her out there as this kind of nearly anti-hero. That's the way the media are writing about it at the moment, and they're writing about John Walker as if he's not the hero, as if he's the bad guy. He's interested in borders. He's interested in having his country be protected, whereas Carly Morgenthau's whole idea is no borders, one world, we're all together, and we all roam about the place. Seem familiar? It really should. So that's all I can say on that, particularly on this platform. But that's why they're treating Walker in this way. It's had the adverse reaction, though, for an awful lot of fans, particularly myself. I quite like Walker. I think he's a very good character. And I also then think then towards the end, I think it makes a very, very sensible thing to see that when Hoskins is killed, that Walker goes nuts and he runs after these people, and these people have caused serious damage and have hurt innocent people that a lot of Twitter users, a lot of weirdos on Twitter seem to want to forget. So he runs out and he deals with it. I was 100% on his side, and I don't think anybody else is going to differ with that. And I don't think if you have a rational, logical mind, you're going to differ with that. But instead, the way they tried to paint it is they tried to paint it like he's a bad guy. They tried to paint it like he's a bit unhinged. And I don't think that's a normal response. He's seen his best friend be taken out by this person who was literally evil. And now the criticism has been drawn at Walker. Very strange. The last person who I'm going to talk about, and the person who I have to say before this series started, I was quite excited about, was Sam Wilson, and that's played by Anthony Mackie. I think Anthony Mackie is a very capable actor. I also think he's a very intelligent man. I have seen a numerous amount of interviews with this man where he talks sensibly, he talks rationally, he talks logically. He talks about sort of injustices that certain people feel, and he says, well, instead of behaving in a certain stereotypical way, you should say yes sir, no sir, are we done sir. Very simple, and it's a very, very good way of going forward. He constantly talks about how his daddy raised him to be someone of respect and of someone then to not put himself into trouble, not to get himself into danger, and to just move on and just say, okay, if things aren't going my way, I can sit somewhere, put the cuffs on me, I can sit somewhere and we'll get this all ironed out, we'll go to court. He's on multiple interviews saying that. He's also very capable in knowing what's going on, particularly with the MCU, and that he's saying that the likes of the Falcon is the movie star now. It's not Anthony Mackie. It's the Falcon is the movie star. There's no Stallone. There's no Schwarzenegger. There's no likes of Bruce Willis now anymore. It's the characters now. And he says that this is a big problem because it's catering to, say, 16-year-olds. These stand people that are on Twitter. He's nailed it there. And then a certain country in the Far East. He's talked about that at length. What's interesting, and I'm just going to note this now, and I do challenge anybody to watch this episode 4 back again. Something that I noticed, and it's something that has stuck with me for a very long time, particularly when you talk about acting, is Michael Caine. And Michael Caine has talked about when you're acting and you want to do a good performance and you want people to believe in you, don't blink. And certainly if you are going to blink, make it very minimal and make it very slow if you're going to do it, because then it will draw attention then to you. If you're blinking quite fast and you're blinking quite often, it's disingenuous, you're not believing in what you're saying, and you're also then kind of phoning the performance in. This happened in this episode with Anthony Mackie. And I'm telling you now, if you go back and you watch the scene, particularly the scene when Bucky, Walker and Hoskins are standing outside and Mackie says, I'll go in and I'll talk her down. Watch Mackie's eyes. Mackie blinks an awful lot in that scene. He is literally talking to a character who has decided to inflict terror upon numerous people, and he's trying to talk this character down. Walker's response, in my opinion, is the correct response. Go in there, get her, sort it out now. Whereas the Mackie character, the Falcon character, wants to go in and talk her down. This is a character that has done nefarious, evil, bad things, and is going to continue to do these things, has said out loud what she plans to do, and is involved with various other people that are nefarious and have bad plans. These are people that have taken super soldier serums and are running around the place. And you want then the Falcon to go in and talk her down. I will challenge anybody, watch that performance again from Mackie. It's not his normal performance. His normal performance is really good. He doesn't blink an awful lot. And in that scene, I don't think he believes in what the character is doing. I don't think he believes in what the character is saying. And I don't think he believes that it's the right thing to do for that character in that moment. And I would challenge anybody to watch that, because it's something that I noticed straight away when I seen the episode. And it's something I've talked and thought about an awful lot after I seen the episode, because I've watched an awful lot of interviews. And I also challenge you to do that, the same thing. Look at some interviews with Anthony Mackie. Talks about, say, for example, movies that are being made today. The likes of The Goonies, The Thing, the likes of all these type of Hollywood, 1980s movies that wouldn't get made today because Hollywood want to do remakes. They want to cater to a certain audience. Watch him talking in interviews. He is laser focused. He very rarely blinks. And he's always talking about something that means something to him. Watch his interview, by the way, and I will say this, I recommend this because it was a total curveball. He did a film called Black or White, and he does an interview on one of these channels on YouTube. Can't quite remember it now at the moment, but he does this interview with this girl, and she comes in and she wants to talk about this sort of thing and that sort of thing and the way he looks and all that. He starts off the interview, and I was saying to myself, this could go one of two ways. He could buy into this whole woke sort of stuff, or he can go down the route of, well, this is what we want to do. It's a very fascinating interview because he talks about, this is what woke people want to do, this is what I'm doing, this is what my daddy taught me to do. And I have to say, it's a stunning interview. It's a stunning interview with Anthony Mackie. He does really well in it, and he says really good things in it. So much so that the interviewer, at the start of the interview, and I always really notice these things, she seems like she's really flirting with him at the start of the interview. And as the interview progresses and she realises that he's not on her side and he's not going to dunk on people, she starts to back off and she doesn't know what to think then. Because this is a very intellectual man. He's a very clever man. And I think with those interviews, you do get to piece that together, that this is a man that knows what he's talking about and that he has a very clear mind and way he's going about. Now, this is interviews from 4 or 5 years ago. And this is, to me, the guy that he is, and he sets out his stall from 4 or 5 years ago, that this is the type of man that Anthony Mackie is. And that, for me, is the most heartbreaking thing, I think, when you look at the Sam Wilson character, in that he is going to become Captain America by the end of this series. There's no doubt, it's unequivocal that that's the way they want to go with. I don't think that this is Anthony Mackie's dream of the way it should have went. I think the fact that he had the shield handed over to him at the end of Endgame was probably him with a massive sigh of relief saying, thank you, I am finally here now at this venture. I'm finally now going to be Captain America, because this is something that was done in the comics. It's something that I want to play. It's iconic. And I have to say, I think, whilst I'm not a huge fan of when they change over mantles of characters, I would have liked to see the Sam Wilson character be treated with a lot more respect, and particularly the Falcon, because like I said, I think Anthony Mackie is a very good actor. I think he's a very clever, very astute and very articulate man, and I think he comes across that way, and he's wonderful. And I think he would be somebody, I think, as Captain America, that he would be a very good role model for everybody. But it's hard to look at it now in the way he's being treated, the character's being treated, and this kind of chip on the shoulder, particularly after we've seen in episode 2 and the woke stuff starting to get in there. I would personally think that Mackie knows it. I think he knows, I think he feels it, and I think that this is kind of nearly, he's going to feel nearly like the shield has been a hand-me-down, which it is within this show. The shield was taken off him and given to someone else, and now it's been handed back to him now by the end of the show, because look, this is what's going to happen with this. How are they going to market him going to China? I'm sure that this is another thing that's probably been in his ear also, I'd say, within the company, because we do know what goes on with the company. Look what happened to John Boyega, for example, a fella who I'm not a huge fan of, but there's no denying what happened to him within Star Wars. The fact that Star Wars official Twitter won't acknowledge the birthdays of James Earl Jones, it didn't acknowledge the birthday of Billy D. Williams, two icons, just decided not to say anything about it. I find it hard then to look at the likes of Sam Wilson and Falcon, the way he's been treated within this show, and then by the end of it now he's going to be Captain America nearly by default. It seems like the way they're shaping it up, it seems like both Bucky and Sam are going to forcefully take the shield, which is obviously symbolism as well too, obviously, for the woke culture that's out there, that this is what they want to do. They want to take something that's not theirs, they want to assimilate, and they want to make it theirs. This is a very dark way to go, particularly with the shield, and particularly with a Captain America character that is iconic in Captain America himself, and that could have been and should have been iconic when Sam Wilson gets the shield. And that's where the heart of my problem lies with this show. This should have been something that should have been nearly a Sam and Bucky show that went on a Jason Bourne mission. They had to uncover a couple of things. He has the shield, and it's about him getting into the role of Captain America, finally getting there. Maybe have some sort of cameo from Chris Evans, giving him that little bit of boost of confidence, because we do know that Falcon within these series, and particularly within the movies, is someone that does kind of lack a little bit of confidence. And I think that that's something that he needed within this series. He needed sort of a mentor, and then he needed basically Barnes then to be like, this is the way you could go with the super soldier serum, it's a problem, or this is the way you could go, it's more so like Steve Rogers. What they've decided to do is they've nearly given that story link into Wyatt Russell's John Walker. John Walker has come off looking really well, in my opinion, and I have to say the majority of people I talk to really like John Walker, and I think it's going to be a shame when you're going to see what's going to happen to him as this show progresses, and then it really then seems very negative then with the way that Sam Wilson is going to come into the possession of the shield yet again, rather than starting off the series with him, with the shield. He is Captain America, and he's adjusting to this position, and he's finding it difficult, because that's what we need to see with these heroes. These heroes are supposed to have flaws. They're supposed to encounter problems, but I think with Sam Wilson, then he could have nearly been a shining light for Bucky. I mean, Bucky, you could have written him in a way that he was a little bit lost, particularly with Steve gone, particularly after Endgame, and Steve is old and he's still young. He's lost so many friends, and then bringing him along and bringing him basically into the world, back to the world of the living, and that could have been Sam Wilson's kind of, talk to moment for Bucky throughout this series. But instead, it's been, let's dunk on Bucky, let's make Bucky feel bad, let's use Bucky when we can, let's make a laugh of him. And then we also have this guy John Walker over here now that we're constantly going to clash with because he feels a bit of a grievance with the fact that John Walker's been given the shield. I think most people, if they're looking at the show, they're looking at it a little bit more objectively. It's not John Walker's fault he's got the shield. That's a decision that was made out of everyone's hands. And then you have this bitterness then coming from Bucky that's feeding into Sam by saying you should never have handed the shield over. And it's a very strange series. That's episode 4 in a nutshell, and now I've talked about that now quite at length. There's 2 more episodes left. I wouldn't hold out an awful lot of hope for it. I don't think the MCU is going to survive for too much longer after this. I think the MCU is in big trouble. I think when you see the likes of what happened with WandaVision, it lifted an awful lot as well, particularly with the fight scenes from Man of Steel, by the way. Don't think we haven't noticed that the likes of Endgame also featured, and Infinity War in particular, featured elements and certain plot points that have happened in Zack Snyder's Justice League. I mean, going as far as saying like Thor shooting lightning at Thanos, and then the shoulder, the axe into the shoulder, is the exact same thing that happened to Darkseid in Zack Snyder's Justice League. Hit with lightning from Zeus, shoulder injured then by Ares. And there's a number of other instances that have happened now in the MCU that have been basically directly lifted from Zack Snyder's Justice League. So now I think they're at a moment in time where they're going to have to look at their story group and see what they need to do going forward. They've given themselves an awful lot of time to fill with these episodes, which I don't think works with the MCU, because the MCU isn't really anything that's not Shakespeare. They don't really do much other than tell jokes, and there's no really long-lasting implications. Some of the stuff that happens is very silly in comparison to, if you think about it long enough, like the likes of Iron Man sacrificing himself. It doesn't really make sense then after the fact when you have Doctor Strange and the variety of other heroes there that could have actually done something, that could have actually taken up the gauntlet. But yeah, it's Iron Man, gives him his big moment. That's a scene that's directly lifted from Zack Snyder's plans for Justice League, with Batman doing basically the same thing. So I would say now that the MCU is in big trouble without a Zack Snyder to be lifting their ideas from. And we've certainly seen it now with WandaVision. WandaVision was very poor. This has been very poor so far, and I think it will continue on down that road. Loki, in my opinion, looks absolutely dreadful. It's a character that died in Infinity War, should have stayed that way, shouldn't have came back, but yet they decided to bring it back, and they're probably going to make a mockery of him also, even though it's a bit of a mockery of a character anyway. But this is the danger of the MCU now. They've told stories now that don't fit, that aren't good, that have been able to have holes picked in them very easy, very quickly, and particularly have exposed themselves even more for a series. And now they have a guy as Captain America that a large majority of the fans actually quite like, that they're going to decide to remove and hand the shield to someone else that has behaved totally irrationally within the show, when they could have done something much better with Sam Wilson in him becoming Captain America. Disappointing to see. But anyway, I'm going to leave the video there. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell up above for future uploads. Check out the links posted in the description down below. Support the channel. Make sure you're subscribed, because this platform is doing a lot of wonky things at the moment. It's subbing people and then unsubbing people. So do make sure that you are subscribed to the channel, because there are a lot of strange things that are happening, particularly when people have decided to tell the truth, like I am. I'll talk to you later. Good luck.